Well, hello, Iron Butterfly Universe.
Hello.
Happy almost New Year. Happy almost 2025. How
Crazy.
insane is that?
Absolutely crazy.
When did we start this whole Iron Butterfly movement?
Now we're going to have to start saying 5 years ago.
That's insane.
I know.
Literally insane.
I know.
I can't even believe it, and I'm sure all of you out there can't believe it either. So we're here today because you probably in the month of December have started to see some things from us that you've never seen before. And that is specifically referring to our documentary feature film that we have produced. So we thought we'd jump on here, which is, our mode of communication, and kind of share with you how we've gotten to where we are and what we're trying to do here with the to-be-named documentary, but the Iron Butterfly Media Project.
Yes.
So, as you all know, you're familiar with Iron Butterfly, started with the podcast. And, it started as a fun project that we did in COVID. And, after the first year, we realized that we had something.
Really
and that
special,
it wasn't just us telling us like, oh, we have something special. It was,
Nice job,
I know,
team.
nice job. It was because we were hearing from all of you. And, we realized we were really connecting with our community, which is the national security space. But we realized that what we had with Iron Butterfly Podcast was bigger than our community, and that it could and was touching communities outside of the national security space. And so I remember it was a December, I think after the first year, Cadie and I sat down and we were like, okay, how can we bring these voices to a larger audience? Like we had our typical, you've heard us say, dream sessions. And we threw around some ideas. We threw some spaghetti at the wall. And the one that stuck was, how about a documentary? No one has ever done a documentary about women in the intelligence community. We see documentaries about the IC, but it's usually topical, just like we noticed with the podcasts, which
Or
are
like
great.
James Bondified.
Right. And a lot of those are really great, but nothing was like what we were doing with the podcast, but on film. So we had this crazy idea. Luckily, we had a few friends that were in the entertainment business, some that had production companies. We had a friend of ours that was a producer and a documentarian, which, by the way, I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. I did not even know that was a word until we started this project.
And now you are one.
And now we are documentarians. So we reached out to them and said, hey, is this a crazy idea? Can we do this knowing nothing about how to make a documentary, know nothing about what it takes, how much it costs, none of it. How to make a story arc, that is compelling for a documentary audience. And they all said yes. They said, you can absolutely do it. We will help you. And
It's funny because the way you phrased the question is you said, we asked them, is this a crazy idea? And then you were like, and all of them said yes.
Well, they
did. They did say that.
They said, yes, you can do it.
They said, yes, it's crazy, but yes, you can do it.
Yes. And yes, we will help you.
Yeah.
So we partnered with Poor Bear Stories, who was also one of the people that we went to initially and said, hey, is this nuts? And so that's what we did. And well, before we started the actual process, we had to identify the women we wanted in the documentary. And as you have all seen now through our social media blitz this December, who those women are. All amazing, authentic women who just love with their whole heart, love the jobs that they held. Yeah. And so we had to ask them, which I think was probably one of the scariest parts of this whole process. Katie and I sat down with each of them, and we had this.
We brought like our cute little padfolio.
Padfolios. We're like, so this is what we're presenting to you. What do you think? And would you do it? And luckily, all of them said yes. One of them, I'm thinking in particular, she said, well, that's an idea. And I'll have to think about it.
Yeah.
But we got her. We ended up getting her. And so, that was the beginning.
Yeah.
And so where are we now and how did we get here?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think what's so cool is that what we actually said to the women, I think is what's reflected ultimately in the teaser and the trailer that we released, which is that I think when Americans, and even outside of the United States, think about government and the United States intelligence community, they think of this like faceless, formless institution with like dark halls and like flickering lights and like in a basement somewhere with no windows. And there's some of that. But I think most importantly, like the intelligence community has faces, like institutions have faces, right? And they're built of the people who actually serve. And so, during the time that we started the podcast, which was during a global pandemic, like we all saw trust in government just at an all-time low. And I still have memories of going home and sitting around the table with like extended family and friends and like out in the American Southwest and hearing people that I love talk about the deep state and them not realizing that like I was sitting there in the intelligence community as a member of the deep state. Right. And so I think sometimes
the deep state.
I think sometimes we forget that these people are just people and they're, sisters and mothers and friends
neighbors
and they do yoga and they
garden
and they have dogs.
I was going to say they love their dogs and cats.
Shout out to all the cat ladies out there.
Yes.
But yeah, and so like that's really kind of what we ran with, and I think what we kind of ended up doing is like documenting history a little bit along the way.
Yeah.
And so our production process was, of course, we wanted to touch on like the amazing professional impact that these women have had, which I think the intelligence community is unique in this regard because intelligence is literally the study of the world. And so you have this group of 10 women who have literally lived all over the world, have gone to some countries and worked in some countries that most Americans aren't even allowed to visit, right? Many probably don't even know the names of, but which have had this like really global impact on our nation's security and on global security, right? And so we wanted to have
some would say a butterfly effect.
A butterfly effect. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. So we had some face-to-face interviews that we started in DC that were really focused on like professionally what these women did and like trying to contextualize that for the layperson and compare and contrast that with what your average American probably knows from like Hollywood and James Bond, right? And then we wanted to do some deep dives with a few of the women, actually like in their homes, like showing viewers where they're from.
Across the country.
Across the country.
Yeah.
We kind of went to the Southwest. We went to the Northwest. We went to we were on the East Coast. Yeah, we were all over the place. And really just wanted to capture like the human side of like who these women really are. And then we also took almost all of the women, to basically on a little retreat, like
adventure
girls trip.
Yes.
We went and rented a cabin up in Idaho and brought all the women together and sat them around a table. And those will be just some of the moments that I'll treasure for the rest of my life. And we hopefully captured some of the essence of that as well. And I think what's important for people to know is these women had never spent that time together before.
Well, what I was going to say is how that happened and why we came up with that idea was I was at an event, maybe a year before, and I saw 2 senior women at this event, and I was standing next to them, senior in rank, I always like to say. And one of the women came to another woman and said, we had a career together, and, we kind of rose the ranks, together in different ways. But I've never told you what you mean to me and what I thought about you through the 30 or 40 years of service that we had together. And I was watching this thinking, oh my goodness, it was a moment, and it was so special. And, when we were talking about this, we were saying, like, a lot of these women never have had that moment together. And wouldn't it be cool to capture that?
Yeah.
And I think we did.
We did. We really did. So now we are entering the post-production process, which we have learned a lot about.
Yes.
So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So number one, it's the most expensive part of making a film, in a documentary in particular.
Yeah. And just to put that into context, one of the stats that we heard is that for a lot of these like Netflix grade documentaries,
which is what we're trying to, ultimate goal, right, is for it to be on a streaming platform. So
it reaches
so
as
everyone
many people
can
as
see it.
possible.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And minimum, those documentaries cost $4,000 a minute in post-production. So if you think about your average kind of feature film length movie, it just kind of puts into perspective, like at a minimum, how much is really required.
Yeah. And so we've been also around the country in the past year or so, talking with producers and people who have done this
in the industry
professionally, because again, we're new to all of this, and just trying. What we have learned is that we really want to retain creative control of this project. We could easily sell it as it is right now to a production company who could finish it and get it on a streaming platform, but it wouldn't really look and feel like we intended it to look and feel, and to honor the people that are in it and the women who have shared their stories so graciously and freely with us.
Yep.
And so in order to do that, as you all have seen this month, we are trying to raise money so that we can finish it ourselves with Poor Bear Stories, so that we can retain the creative control of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we have done is we have created a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. We received our 501c3 status late last year. And so any individual can contribute to the film and make a tax-deductible gift. Our mission is to amplify the voices of women and minorities in underrepresented industries, and national security and intelligence is certainly one of them. It's one where, these are stories that have literally never been told. These are women who have spent their entire lives, entire careers operating in the shadows. We actually had one of the women recently say that it was easier for her to kind of catch surveillance equipment when she was walking down the streets of a hard target country than it was to sit actually on the other side of a camera and be interviewed by us. So really, like, truly, these are women's stories that need to be told, and who really have had just like an outsized impact on our nation's security.
Well, and really, you all have asked for this. What's interesting is with 7 seasons of the podcast, you asked for it, and you kept saying, the feedback we received from the podcast is, we love it and we want more. Like, we hear the 40-minute episode and we think there's so much more behind these women's stories. We want more. And that's what this documentary is giving you, giving you more.
No, totally. And I think, last thing that we'll say is, like, this documentary belongs to all of you. Like, it belongs to every single person who has met us for coffee, who has met us for lunch, who has championed us along the way, who has listened to an episode of Iron Butterfly podcast,
100%.
who has given financially to support this film. Like, we could not do this without all of you. And every single moment that we are working on this project, we are thinking about honoring the contributions of course, the women that we're highlighting, but also the broader community that has supported them and that has supported us. So
and
that's
the
why
future,
we're here.
the future of young men and women who want to join the community. It's for them too.
Absolutely.
One of the women in the documentary has said, you guys, Iron Butterfly is documenting history. And I really believe that. And so we are excited. We hope you consider
we know you have many choices when
Yes.
it comes to end of year giving, but we hope you consider Iron Butterfly Foundation and consider supporting this mission.
Yeah. And thank you all. And we can't wait to show this to the world.
See you soon. Stay fierce.
Stay fierce.